Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Frederick County Executive Jan Gardner, and joining me today is Eileen Mitchell, who's the Executive Director of the Fort Detrick Alliance. Welcome, Eileen.
Oh, I am so glad to be here. This is great.
So, well, I'm happy to have you on. I've known you for a long time. You spent many years as the Deputy Garrison Commander over at Fort Detrick, so I interacted with you a lot during my years as a county commissioner. You're always the person who could solve any problem, which, quite frankly, I loved. You were a one-stop shop for those of us who were in elected office. But now you're with the Fort Detrick Alliance. I think it's a great position for you because you bring lots of years of experience and knowledge about Fort Detrick to the job. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, now that I've kind of spilled the beans on that?
Well, basically, I was at Fort Detrick for 35 years. I was in public affairs for probably about 20 of those, and then I moved into the management side of it and became the Deputy Garrison Commander. And there was probably 20-some commanders that I had worked for in some capacity. And the good thing about my job now with the Alliance and being at Fort Detrick that long is that I knew Fort Detrick. I knew the organizations and I knew what they did. Now, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a researcher, so some of what they did or a lot of what they did actually went over my head. But the concept of what they did, I understand. And so I can look at an organization and say, okay, well, that's the organization that'll do this, or this is the organization that does that. And one of the things I really enjoy that I learned at Detrick is I understand the complexity of it. It's very confusing to people who are not at Fort Detrick, and even to people who are at Fort Detrick, who does what, and who's in charge. So my learning about Fort Detrick, I think, was very beneficial to the Alliance.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different agencies that are located at Fort Detrick, and I think it's a little bit different than a lot of forts or bases around the country because, well, it is certainly military. A lot of the agencies there are going to be around for a long time, because communications is, the satellite communications, that's going to be there. The need for the research is going to be there, not just for our soldiers, but, we talk about Ebola or Zika, a lot of that research work is being done right here in Frederick at Fort Detrick.
Absolutely, it is, and a lot of what they do is actually beneficial to the general public, too, and a lot of people don't know that while they are looking, most of the organizations there, the military side, are looking to help protect the service members. We have the other non-military organizations that are working in concert with the military to try and solve these issues and come up with vaccines or preventive measures for all these diseases.
That's right. So it benefits everybody in our country from protecting the soldiers that protect our country, but also it protects everybody's public health.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So it's incredible. So because it's so complex, how do you go out as part of the Fort Detrick Alliance and really try to build relationships and between the Fort Detrick and the community and improve that understanding of the work that happens there?
Well, a lot of it is sort of what I used to do when I worked at Fort Detrick, because I was the liaison primarily to the community. We talk to people. We try and help them understand what is at Fort Detrick. If they have a question, we try and get the answer for them. I don't know everything, so a lot of times they'll ask a question and I'll say, well, let me find out who at Fort Detrick can give you that answer. Or they go, if it's a business, I do this. What's the organization out there that's connected to what I do? Again, because it's very complex, it's very difficult for some of these businesses and the general population to know who's doing what.
Well, what is the specific mission and purpose of the Fort Detrick Alliance?
The mission that we have is to facilitate communications between the federal entities that are at Fort Detrick, not just the military, and the general population. Although we have members who belong to the Alliance, we are a membership organization. We are a 501c3, so we're a nonprofit. But what we try and do, again, is bring people together, let them talk to each other, help understand who at Fort Detrick, who are you, what do you do? And Fort Detrick understands what's in the community because they rely on the community for a lot of things. they contract out, and they have employees. So they really do rely on the community, and so it's great to be able to bring them together and let them talk.
Well, there's certainly a lot of civilian employees at Fort Detrick, and of course, they're an important part of our community. You know, they support our schools, they support a lot of our volunteer organizations. They're active in the larger Frederick County community. So they spread the word to some extent about what happens in their jobs at Fort Detrick. But now it's a little bit more of a challenge these days to get onto the fort. So is there any interest in having events so that people can come on and see what's happening?
Actually, we have one of the main things we do is to have events. We try and have networking events, and we try and get different speakers from Fort Detrick, again, to come out off the post and talk to the population in the Frederick County, and actually Montgomery County and Washington County, because as you know, Fort Detrick is not just supporting Frederick County anymore. They now support Montgomery County because of Forest Glen that they
Right.
took over in the last BRAC. And they have a lot of employees who live in other counties. So it's a wide population. And so to get them to come out to these events is really important. And one of the new events that we started in April, we're having a networking breakfast. It's quarterly. And the first speaker was Colonel Bob O'Brien, who's the garrison commander. And then we have another one coming up, and that will be Dr. Craig Reynolds, who's with the National Cancer Institute. Mm-hmm. So every quarter we will have a speaker from some organization at Fort Detrick who comes out to this. It's held at Hood College. They're one of our partners, and they'll come out and be able to listen to what goes on to in these organizations at Fort Detrick.
So if people want to attend one of these breakfasts, how can they find out about it?
We have a website. It's fortdetrickalliance.org. And we have events on there, and we have links to all of our business members and individuals who belong if they have a website. And we also have a link to Fort Detrick, to all of the agencies that are there. So you can go on our website anytime and look at what the Alliance is, what we do, who's part of it, or just try and get some information, because you can take the link to wherever you want to go. And we also have links to the county and the city because they're major partners with us.
So what's the major benefit to, say, a business who wants to be a member?
The benefit to the members, the business, is that they will get to meet people at Fort Detrick. Hopefully we can have the type of events that allow them to talk to Fort Detrick. We helped, just recently, we helped the U.S. Army Garrison with it was like an acquisition fair type thing. And there were a lot of businesses that came to that. The Garrisons put it on, they held it, but the Alliance helped to advertise it to get the businesses. Yes, because we need them to understand what are the requirements, first off. Secondly, how do you do it? How do you get in there?
Well, I think there's a lot of interest in the business community in particular to be able to do contract work. And so, you know, that's always been out there as how can we keep the business, because the fort certainly does a lot of business in terms of needing contractual support. How do we keep that local here in Frederick County or here in Maryland? And so that's always a big point of interest.
It really is, because you know, Detrick has its rules. I know its rules because I was there for so long, and there's certain things they have to do, and procurement is procurement.
Right. And
you have to do it the proper way, or you end up, you know, with something going wrong. So they do need to learn how you get into the door. One thing I always say, the Alliance, we don't get them the contracts.
Right.
Our job is
not.
to try and bring them together so they understand who are they looking for? Who do they go to?
Right.
Because each organization out there has their own contracting officer pretty much. So there's quite a few of them out there, and you just can't go to one of them to try and figure out what everybody needs.
Okay. Well, see, I think that's an important piece of information right there. And I really, you know, recognize that your job in terms of procurement is to really just be that connection for information. And, you know, people need to know what they need to do, who they need to approach, where they need to go to get that contractual information. Obviously, you're not part of that procurement process, and all levels of government have procurement processes that are pretty well specifically laid out, and people have to get into that queue and figure out how to do that. But you can help make the connection for
Right,
people.
we'll do whatever we can. We're talking about having some kind of a acquisition fair where we have all of the contracting officers who will be in one place, so businesses come in and can talk to all of them. That's a pretty big goal to do that, to get them all to come to it, but that's what we do hope we can do.
Well, I really think you're the perfect person for this job because you have such a wealth of experience and knowledge about what's happening at Fort Detrick over the years, and you're very aware of what the community is interested in knowing about and hearing about. So, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, the one thing is we're here for not just our members. When we have events, we allow other people to come in. Obviously, our members have the first priority because they're paying their dues, membership dues, to be members. But we always will allow the general population to come in so that they can also learn more about Fort Detrick and understand it, so that they themselves, when they're out and about and hear something about Fort Detrick, they may, oh, I went to something there and I heard them talk, and that's not what I heard. So it's a good way to let everybody know. And it's just, it's actually a really good, really nice job. It really is. I mean, everybody said, oh, you're perfect for it. But it is different than what I did.
Absolutely.
I never worked with nonprofit myself, and I never had a membership, so I was the federal government. So there was a learning curve. I started December 8th. So it's only been, what, six months about that, I've done this. And so it has a little bit of learning curve, but I think I'm past that now. So I think we're really, really ready to move out and do a lot more things.
Well, I look forward to working with you. We just, Fort Detrick is one of our biggest employers, and when we go out and talk about Frederick, we certainly always talk about the role that Fort Detrick plays in our community, because it is an important role. Mm-hmm. Well, 80% of the jobs in Frederick County are private sector jobs. Fort Detrick is one of our major employers with, over 10,000 people, depending on whether you count the National Cancer Institute in that count or not. Right. And, it really does good work for promoting the health of our warfighters, but also public health for, everyone in our country and around the globe. And so it's very important work.
It is. It really is. And that's one of the reasons why I took the job. I had retired from Dietrich. It would have been 3 years in April. And they approached me and said they needed a new executive director. And of course, my first thought was, oh, I'm retired. But because I love Fort Detrick, I always did when I was there. And I was actually at Fort Detrick when the alliance was started. So I understood the alliance. So I did think that it would be a good match for me, and hopefully what I'm going to do in the future will benefit Fort Detrick and the Frederick County workforce and the businesses, because we're all in it together.
We are. So we're happy to have you back, so to speak, and we look forward to working with you and making sure that people in Frederick County understand what's happening at Fort Detrick and how important it is to our community. So thank you for joining me today. Thanks to our viewers for joining us. I hope you learned a little bit about the Fort Detrick Alliance. And you can find more information on how to become a member, or how to even just become aware of their events so that you can attend one without becoming a member, and learn more about the role Fort Detrick plays in our country and in our community. Thank you for joining us.